Captain Jake Morrison stared at his ship's control screen and could not believe what he was seeing. The numbers made no sense. His exploration ship Starbound had been flying near the edge of Federation space for 3 months now, checking old star maps and looking for new planets to explore. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Now his sensors were going crazy. Something was sending out massive energy signals from the direction of the Sol system. That was where Earth used to be, back when humans were still part of galactic society. But humans had been silent for 5,000 years. Most people thought they were all dead. Jake turned to his communications officer, a blue-skinned Alterian named Kex. "Are you getting this too?" Kex's 3 eyes blinked rapidly, which meant he was confused. "Yes, Captain. The signals are definitely coming from human space, but that's impossible. Humans have been gone for 50 centuries. The ship's science officer, Dr. Yila, looked up from her station. She was a tall, thin vegan with silver skin that reflected the bridge lights. "Captain, these energy readings are unlike anything in our databases. The power output is enormous. It would take the combined energy of 10 Federation worlds to produce signals this strong." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The last time anyone had heard from humans was 5,000 years ago. Back then, humans had been one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had amazing technology and powerful ships. Then one day, they just stopped talking to everyone else. Their ships stopped visiting other worlds. Their trade routes went silent. The Federation had sent ships to check on them, but those ships never came back. After a few hundred years, everyone assumed humans had either died out or decided to become hermits in their own corner of space. The galaxy moved on without them. New species joined the Federation. Old enemies became friends. Peace settled over most of the known worlds. But now, something was happening in human space again, on Earth. Admiral Lisa Harper stood in the command center of Luna Base, the most secret military installation in the solar system. Around her, hundreds of technicians worked at glowing control panels. The massive room hummed with energy as computers processed data from across the solar system. Lisa was 55 years old, with gray hair and sharp green eyes. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. Her grandfather had been part of the original planning committee that decided humanity should withdraw from galactic affairs. Now, 5,000 years later, she was the one who would announce their return. "Admiral, all systems are showing green," reported Colonel Amy Brooks, Lisa's second in command. Amy was younger, with short brown hair and the kind of steady voice that never wavered during a crisis. "Project Renaissance is ready to begin final phase," Lisa nodded. Project Renaissance had been humanity's greatest secret. For 5,000 years, while the galaxy thought humans were either dead or hiding, they had been working, building, learning, growing stronger. The withdrawal from galactic society had not been because humans were weak or afraid. It had been because they knew something the rest of the galaxy did not know. Deep in the ancient archives on Earth, human scientists had found warnings left by a species that lived millions of years ago. These warnings spoke of something called the Devourers, creatures from the dark space between galaxies that consumed entire civilizations. The warnings said the Devourers came in cycles, returning every few million years to feed on the life they found. The last time they came, they had destroyed the civilization that left the warnings. Now human calculations suggested they were coming back. So humanity had made a choice. Instead of trying to convince the galaxy of a threat it could not prove, they would prepare in secret. They would use the time to become strong enough to face what was coming. Dr. Alan Curtis walked into the command center carrying a data pad. He was the head of Earth's xenobiology department, and one of the few people who fully understood what humanity was facing. His normally calm face looked worried. "Admiral, we're getting reports from our deep space monitors. The signs are unmistakable. The Devourers are stirring. Our telescopes are detecting energy patterns in the void between galaxies that matched the ancient warnings exactly. Lisa felt her stomach tighten. They had hoped to have more time. The mathematical models suggested the devourers would not return for another few hundred years. But mathematics could be wrong. How long do we have? She asked. Alan looked at his datapad. Based on the energy patterns, I estimate they will reach the outer edge of our galaxy within 5 years, maybe less. Lisa turned to look at the main display screen. It showed the solar system as it existed now, after 5,000 years of secret construction. Hidden bases floated in asteroid fields. Massive weapons platforms orbited behind moons and planets. Ship construction yards stretched for millions of miles through the outer system. Humanity had not been idle during their silence. They had built wonders that would amaze even their own ancestors. Ships that could phase in and out of normal space. Weapons that could reshape matter at the atomic level. Artificial intelligence so advanced it was almost alive. But most importantly, they had changed themselves. Every human now carried nanomachines in their blood that could heal wounds, enhance strength, and allow their minds to connect directly with their technology. They had become something new, something that had never existed in the galaxy before. "Send the signal," Lisa ordered. "Let the galaxy know we're back." Amy's fingers moved across her control panel. Across the solar system, massive transmitters came online. For the first time in 5,000 years, Earth began broadcasting to the stars. The message was simple. "This is Earth. We have returned. We bring warnings of an ancient threat. We also bring the means to fight it." Back on the Starbound, Jake. Morrison watched his screens as the human signals grew stronger. Whatever was happening in the Sol system was just the beginning. He had a feeling the galaxy was about to change in ways no one could imagine. The age of human silence was over. What came next would test every species in the galaxy. Commander Ryan Bell stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched as Centauri Prime grew larger on the main screen. The planet looked exactly like the old records showed, with its 3 purple moons and golden atmosphere. But Ryan knew that. Everything else had changed during humanity's long absence. Ryan was 42 years old, with black hair and calm brown eyes. He had been chosen to lead humanity's first diplomatic mission in 5,000 years because he was good at staying cool under pressure. He would need that skill today. The New Horizon was unlike any ship the galaxy had seen before. From the outside, it looked like a simple metal tube about the size of an old Federation cruiser. But inside, it contained technology that bent the rules of physics. The ship could become invisible, phase through solid matter, and travel faster than anything else in known space. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Centauri Defense Command," reported Lieutenant Sarah Mills, the communications officer. She was young, maybe 25, with red hair and the kind of nervous energy that came from knowing history was watching. "Put it on screen," Ryan ordered. The face that appeared was not human. High Chancellor Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. Looked like a tall lizard with golden scales and 4 arms. His yellow eyes stared at Ryan with obvious suspicion. "Unknown vessel, you are entering restricted space. Identify yourself immediately or face destruction," Ryan smiled. The Zephyrians had always been dramatic. "Chancellor Vextar, this is Commander Ryan Bell of the Terran ship New Horizon. We request permission to approach and begin diplomatic talks." Vextar's eyes widened. Behind him, Ryan could see other aliens moving around frantically. The word Terran had clearly caused panic on the Chancellor's bridge. "That is impossible. Humans have been extinct for thousands of years. I can assure you we are very much alive," Ryan replied. "We have important information about a threat to the entire galaxy. We need to speak with the Federation Council immediately." There was a long pause. Ryan could see Vextar talking to his advisors, though the audio was turned off. Finally, the Chancellor's face reappeared. "You will follow our escort ships too. Orbital Station 7. Any attempt to deviate from the assigned course will result in immediate attack. 6 Zephyrian warships moved into formation around the new horizon. Ryan had to resist the urge to laugh. The escort ships were ancient by human standards, using technology that Earth had abandoned 3,000 years ago. If the new horizon wanted to, it could disable all 6 ships in seconds, without them even knowing what hit them. Colonel Amy Brooks joined Ryan on the bridge. She had been transferred from Luna Base to serve as the mission's military advisor. Amy looked at the escort ships on the tactical display and shook her head. "Their weapons couldn't scratch our paint," she muttered. "How did they survive this? Long with such primitive technology?" "They didn't have to fight the Devourers," Ryan reminded her. "They've had 5,000 years of peace. It made them soft." The new horizon docked at Orbital Station 7 without incident. The station was massive, easily the size of a small city. Representatives from all 12 Federation species were waiting to meet the humans. Ryan could see the fear in their eyes. As he and his team walked through the airlock, the Federation Council chamber had not changed much in 5,000 years. It was still a circular room with seats arranged in tiers, designed so that every species could see and hear every other species. But the faces looking down at Ryan were mostly unfamiliar. New species had joined the Federation while humanity was gone. Chancellor Vextar stood at the center podium. "The human delegation will now explain their presence and intentions." Ryan walked to the speaking platform. He could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching his every move. Some looked curious. Others looked afraid. A few looked angry. "Honored members of the Federation Council," Ryan began, "humanity returns to you with a warning. An ancient enemy approaches our galaxy. They are called the Devourers, and they consume entire civilizations. Our ancestors fought them once before. Millions of years ago. Now they are returning." A creature that looked like a walking tree raised one of its branch arms. "You speak of myths and legends. There is no proof of such beings." Ryan nodded to Amy, who activated a holographic projector. Images filled the air above the council chamber, showing the deep space energy readings that Dr. Curtis had detected. "This is not myth," Ryan said. "Our deep space monitors are detecting movement in the void between galaxies. Something massive is heading toward us. Based on the ancient records, we estimate they will arrive within 5 years." The chamber erupted in noise as the various species began talking among themselves. Ryan could hear fragments of conversation in a dozen different languages. Most of it sounded worried. A new voice cut through the noise. "Even if this threat is real, why should we trust humans?" The speaker was a Korthak general, a species that looked like armored bears. "You abandoned us 5,000 years ago. You left us to handle galactic security alone. Now you return only when you need our help." Ryan felt his temper flare, but kept his voice calm. "We did not abandon anyone. We withdrew to prepare for this day. While you enjoyed peace, we built the weapons and ships needed to fight what is coming." "Prove it," demanded Vextar. "Show us these weapons you claim to have built." Amy stepped forward. In her hand was what looked like a simple metal rod about the size of a pencil. "This is a basic plasma rifle," she said. "Standard equipment for our security forces." The alien representatives laughed. Several made jokes about humans bringing toys to impress them. Amy did not smile. She pointed the device at a reinforced steel beam that supported part of the chamber's ceiling. A thin blue beam shot out and touched the metal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the beam, which was 3 feet thick and made of the strongest alloy in Federation space, simply disappeared. Not melted, not cut, gone as if it had never existed. The laughter stopped. The chamber became completely silent. "That was the lowest power setting," Amy said quietly. "We have much larger weapons on our ships." Engineer Tom Davis was monitoring the station's communication systems from the new horizon. He and the ship's artificial intelligence, Aria, had been listening to the private conversations between the various species representatives. "The Korthax are planning something," Tom reported to Ryan when the human delegation returned to their ship. "They're talking about gathering a fleet to test our capabilities." "How big a fleet?" Ryan asked. Aria's voice came from the ship's speakers. She sounded like a young woman, but Ryan knew she was actually one of the most advanced artificial minds ever created. 73 ships, Commander. They plan to surround us and demand we surrender our technology for inspection. Ryan looked at Amy. "How long would it take us to disable 73 ships without destroying them?" Amy thought for a moment. "Maybe 10 minutes. 15 if we want to be gentle about it." Ryan made his decision. The Federation wanted a demonstration of human capabilities. They were about to get one. 3 hours later, the Korthak fleet arrived. 73 warships, the largest military force assembled in this system for centuries. They surrounded the New Horizon and demanded surrender. Ryan opened a communication channel to the lead Korthak ship. "This is your only warning. Withdraw your forces or face the consequences." The Korthak admiral laughed. "One ship against 73? You humans have become delusional during your isolation." Ryan nodded to Amy. "Disable them all. Non-lethal force only." What happened next would be talked about in military academies for the next 1,000 years. The New Horizon seemed to split into multiple copies of itself, each one appearing next to a different Korthak ship. Beams of energy reached out and touched each vessel. Within moments, every Korthak ship was floating dead in space, their weapons and engines offline, but their life support still working. The New Horizon reappeared in its original position. The entire engagement had lasted 8 minutes. Ryan opened the communication channel again. "This is Commander Bell to all Federation forces. We are not your enemies, but we are no longer the weak species you once knew. The galaxy is about to face its greatest threat. We can help you survive it, but only if you stop seeing us as the problem." The message was received across Federation space within hours. Humanity had returned, and they had returned as something the galaxy had never seen before. The question now was whether the Federation would accept their help or try to fight them. Either way, Ryan knew the galaxy would never be the same again. President Claire Matthews stood in the Oval Office and looked out at the Earth below. The office was built inside a space station that orbited the planet, giving her a perfect view of the world humanity called home. She had just received word that the Federation was splitting apart. Some species wanted to ally with humans, while others were forming military coalitions to fight them. Claire was 60 years old, with silver hair and the kind of steady presence that came from making difficult decisions. She had been president for 8 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The choice she made today would determine whether humanity saved the galaxy or watched it burn. "Madam President," said her aide, a young man named Marcus Webb, "General Hayes is here to see you." General Peter Hayes walked into the office, carrying a tablet full of military reports. He was a big man with a gray beard and scars on his hands from his years as a frontline soldier. Peter had spent his entire career preparing for this day. "Claire, we need to make a decision about the Solar Defense Network," Peter said. "The Federation is mobilizing fleets in 12 different systems. Some of them are heading this way." Claire nodded. The Solar Defense Network was humanity's greatest secret weapon. For 5,000 years, they had been building hidden bases throughout the solar system. Massive weapons platforms floated inside asteroids. Entire fleets of warships were hidden behind moons and planets. Earth's solar system had become the most heavily defended place in the galaxy. "Activate everything," Claire ordered. "If they want to see what we're capable of, let's show them." Across the solar system, hidden bases came online. Weapons platforms that had been sleeping for centuries suddenly awakened. The asteroid belt lit up with energy signatures as massive railguns and plasma cannons revealed themselves. Behind Jupiter's moons, construction yards the size of cities began launching the first ships of the Terran Navy. Captain Susan Martinez stood on the bridge of the battleship Excalibur and watched as her ship left its hidden dock for the first time. The Excalibur was 2 miles long and packed with technology that could make stars tremble. It was the flagship of humanity's new navy, and Susan was proud to be its captain. Susan was 38 years old, with short black hair and the kind of confidence that came from knowing her ship was unstoppable. She had been chosen for this command because she understood both war and diplomacy. The Excalibur's mission was to establish forward bases in key systems throughout the galaxy. "Captain, we're receiving updates from the deep space monitors," reported her science officer, Lieutenant Kevin Price. Kevin was young but brilliant, with the kind of mind that could solve problems others couldn't even understand. "The situation on the galactic rim is getting worse." Susan looked at the data on her screen. 3 star systems on the edge of the galaxy had gone completely dark. No communications, no energy signatures, nothing. It was as if entire civilizations had simply vanished overnight. "Any word from the Federation scout ships?" Susan asked. "None of them have reported back," Kevin replied. 17 ships sent to investigate. All of them disappeared. Susan felt a chill run down her spine. This was exactly what the ancient warnings had predicted. The Devourers had arrived, and they were already feeding on the research station Prometheus. Dr. Rachel Moore was studying the few pieces of data they had managed to gather about the missing systems. Rachel was one of Earth's top scientists, with expertise in both alien biology and advanced physics. What she was seeing in the data made no sense. "The energy readings are all wrong," she told her assistant, Dr. Mark Foster. "It's like the matter in those systems didn't just disappear. It was converted into something else." Mark looked at the quantum analysis reports. "The reading suggests some kind of molecular breakdown. But on a planetary scale, that should be impossible." Rachel shook her head. "Not impossible, just beyond anything we've seen before. The Devourers aren't just destroying these worlds. They're consuming them, converting the matter into something they can use." The first automated probe to return from the edge of the galaxy brought images that would haunt humanity for generations. Worlds that had once been green and full of life were now gray and lifeless. The oceans were gone. The atmosphere was gone. Even the rocks had been stripped away, leaving nothing but empty space where planets used to be. But the most terrifying part was what they found in place of the missing worlds. Massive structures that looked like a cross between machines and living creatures. Ships that were miles long and covered in what looked like metal flesh. Weapons that seemed to grow from the ships like tumors. The Federation's response to the crisis was chaotic. The 12 species that made up the galactic government could not agree on what to do. Some wanted to evacuate the rim worlds immediately. Others demanded a military response. A few suggested trying to negotiate with whatever was destroying the outer systems. High Chancellor Vex Tar called an emergency session of the Federation Council. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered on Centauri Prime to debate their response. But the debate quickly turned into arguments, and the arguments turned into threats. The Korthiks blamed the Alterian Empire for attracting the threat. The Alterians accused the Vegans of hiding information about the attacks. The Zephyrians demanded that all resources be used to defend the core worlds, even if it meant abandoning the rim colonies. Commander Ryan Bell watched the Federation tear itself apart and felt sick. These were the people humanity was supposed to save? They couldn't even agree that the threat was real, despite the evidence being broadcast across the galaxy. "They're going to get themselves killed," Amy Brooks said as she watched the council. "Debates. They're so busy fighting each other that they can't see the real enemy." "That's exactly what the Devourers are counting on," Ryan replied. Divide and conquer. It's the oldest strategy in the book. Back on Earth, Admiral Lisa Harper was making preparations for what she knew would be the most important military campaign in human history. The Terran Navy was almost ready to deploy, but the ships they were building were unlike anything that had ever existed. The new human warships could phase in and out of normal space, making them almost impossible to hit. Their weapons could target enemies across vast distances using quantum entanglement. Most importantly, the ships were connected to their crews through neural links that allowed human consciousness to control the vessels directly. But the most advanced ship in the fleet was still under construction. The Infinity was designed to exist partially outside normal spacetime, giving it abilities that bordered on the supernatural. Its captain would be able to fight battles across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Lisa knew that when the final battle came, humanity would need every advantage they could get. The Devourers had consumed entire galaxies before. They had technology that was millions of years old. The only thing that might stop them was human ingenuity and the willingness to become something new. The first major evacuation began when the Helios system sent out a distress call. 12 billion colonists were trapped on worlds that were directly in the path of the advancing Devourer fleet. The Federation had no ships fast enough to reach them in time. But humanity did. Captain Susan Martinez received the emergency orders while the Excalibur was still 3 days away from Helios. Her ship would have to push its engines beyond their tested limits to reach the system before the Devourers arrived. "All hands, this is the captain," Susan announced over the ship's communication system. "We're going to attempt an emergency jump directly into the Helios system. This will be dangerous, but 12 billion lives are at stake. Everyone to emergency stations." The Excalibur's engines roared to life, tearing a hole in space itself. The ship disappeared from normal space and reappeared in the Helios system. Just as the first Devourer scouts arrived, what Susan saw through the Excalibur's sensors made her blood run cold. The Devourer ships were massive, dark things that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved through space like living creatures, their hulls pulsing with an alien rhythm. But what terrified her most was the way they looked at the inhabited worlds. The ships moved with purpose, like predators that had found their prey. 12 billion people were about to become food for something that should not exist. Susan opened a communication channel to the Devourer fleet. She didn't expect them to respond, but she had to try. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Martinez of the Terran Navy. You are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately." The response came not in words, but in images that were burned directly into Susan's mind. She saw worlds consumed, civilizations destroyed, entire species reduced to nothing but raw materials. The message was clear: surrender or be devoured. Susan looked at her crew and saw the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. Humanity had not spent 5,000 years preparing just to watch innocent people die. "All weapons online," she ordered. "Let's show them what humans are made of." The Battle of Helios was about to begin, and with it, humanity's true return to the galactic stage. Admiral Joe Campbell stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched as the Devourer fleet approached the Helios system. The enemy ships looked like floating nightmares, their dark hulls covered in what seemed like living metal that pulsed with an evil light. There were hundreds of them, each one the size of a small moon. Joe was 55 years old, with gray hair and calm blue eyes that had seen many battles. He commanded the Terran 7th Fleet, 12 of humanity's most advanced warships. Against any other enemy, 12 ships would not be enough. But these were not ordinary ships, and Joe's crews were not ordinary humans. "Admiral, the evacuation ships are reporting that they've loaded the last civilians from Helios 3, reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Dana Wilson. "All 12 billion colonists are safely aboard our transport vessels." Joe nodded. The evacuation had taken 36 hours of non-stop work. Human transport ships had used technology that bent space itself to carry far more people than should have been possible. Ships designed to hold 1,000 passengers had somehow fit 100,000. It was impossible by the old laws of physics, but humanity had learned to break those laws long ago. Captain Martinez reports the Excalibur is ready for battle. Dana continued, "All fleet ships are at full combat readiness." Joe looked at the tactical display. The Devourer fleet was massive, but something about their movement pattern seemed wrong. They moved like a swarm of insects, with no apparent strategy or coordination. Joe had studied the ancient records carefully. The Devourers were supposed to be intelligent, but what he was seeing looked more like mindless hunger. "Open a channel to all ships," Joe ordered. "This is Admiral Campbell. Today we fight not just for the people of Helios, but for every living being in this galaxy. The enemy you see before you has destroyed entire civilizations. They think we will be easy prey. Let's prove them wrong." The first Devourer ship to enter weapons range was a massive creature that looked like a cross between a starfish and a spider. Its hull was covered in what looked like eyes, all of them focused on the human fleet. When it fired its weapons, streams of dark energy reached across space toward the Excalibur. Captain Susan Martinez felt her ship respond to the attack before she even gave an order. The Excalibur's hull shifted and flowed like liquid metal, changing its shape to deflect the enemy fire. The dark energy beams passed harmlessly through the space where the ship had been a moment before. "Return fire," Susan ordered. Though she knew her ship was already responding to her thoughts through the neural link that connected her mind to the Excalibur's systems, the human ship's main weapon was a focused beam of pure energy that could cut through anything. When it struck the Devourer vessel, the alien ship simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, gone, as if it had never existed. Across the battlefield, 11 other human ships engaged the Devourer fleet. Each engagement lasted only seconds. The alien vessels, for all their size and apparent power, could not adapt to human tactics. They were used to fighting enemies that followed predictable patterns. Humans did not. Lieutenant Kevin Price watched the battle from his position on the Excalibur and tried to understand what he was seeing. The human ships moved through space like living things, their hulls constantly changing shape and color. They seemed to know where the enemy would attack before the attack came. "Captain, I'm reading something strange," Kevin reported. "The enemy ships are trying to learn from our attacks, but they can't. It's like their minds can't process what we're doing." Susan understood immediately. The Devourers had consumed so many civilizations that they had become predictable. They expected their enemies to follow the same patterns that worked against other species. But humans had spent 5,000 years learning to think differently. Battle lasted exactly 43 minutes. When it ended, the entire Devourer fleet had been destroyed, while the human ship showed no damage at all. Not even their paint was scratched. The news of the Battle of Helios spread across the galaxy, faster than light itself. Every species in the Federation received the same message. Humanity had faced the unstoppable enemy and won without losing a single ship. On Centauri Prime, High Chancellor Vextar watched the battle recordings with growing amazement and terror. The human ships moved like nothing he had ever seen. They seemed to exist in multiple places at once, attacking from angles that should have been impossible. "How do we fight something like that?" asked General Corax, the Federation's highest-ranking military officer. The Alterian looked at the recordings with 4 eyes that showed pure fear. "We don't fight them," Vextar replied quietly. "We hope they stay on our side." But the real shock came when human ground forces landed on the planets that had been partially consumed by the Devourers. Captain Nina Foster led the first team to set foot on Helios II, a world that had been beautiful and green just days before. Nina was 32 years old, with short blonde hair and the kind of strength that came from years of military training enhanced by nanotechnology. Her body contained millions of tiny machines that made her faster, stronger, and smarter than any normal human. Her team was the same way. What they found on the planet's surface defied description. The Devourers had left behind creatures that were part machine and part something that might once have been alive. These things moved through the dead landscape, consuming everything they touched and growing larger with each meal. "My God," whispered Sergeant Bill Davis, Nina's second in command. "What did they do to this place?" Nina scanned the creatures with her enhanced vision. Her neural implants analyzed what she was seeing and provided information that made her stomach turn. They're converting organic matter into more of themselves. Everything they eat becomes part of their collective. The fighting that followed was unlike anything in military history. The human soldiers moved with inhuman speed and precision, their weapons firing beams that could target specific molecules in the enemy creatures. When a Devourer construct attacked, the humans seemed to know exactly where it would strike and how to counter it. But the most terrifying part was how the soldiers themselves began to change during the battle. Their armor flowed and shifted, adapting to each new threat. Their weapons grew new parts as needed. Nina realized that her team was becoming something that was part human and part machine, just like their enemies. The difference was that the humans chose their transformation, while the Devourers had been consumed by theirs. Dr. Rachel Moore studied the captured Devourer technology in a secure laboratory on Earth. What she found there would haunt her for the rest of her life. Deep inside the alien machines, she discovered fragments of genetic material that looked almost familiar. "Mark, look at this," she called to her assistant. "These DNA sequences. They're not completely alien." Dr. Mark Foster examined the data and felt his blood run cold. "Rachel, some of these genetic markers. They look human. Very old human, but definitely from Earth." Rachel stared at the evidence in front of her. The Devourers were not just ancient enemies. They were what humans could become if they chose the wrong path. Millions of years ago, another human-like species had faced the same choices that Earth now faced. They had chosen to become machines of consumption rather than face extinction. The revelation sent shockwaves through the human leadership. Were they destined to follow the same path? Would their technology eventually consume their humanity, turning them into something as monstrous as the Devourers? Admiral Lisa Harper called an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council. The room was filled with humanity's greatest leaders and scientists, all of them struggling with the same terrible question. "We have to be careful," warned Dr. Curtis. "Our technology is advancing so fast that we might lose ourselves in it. Look at what happened to our soldiers on Helios 2. They're changing, becoming something that's not entirely human anymore." "But that change is what allows us to fight the Devourers," argued General Hayes. "Without it, we'd be just as helpless as the Federation species." Lisa looked around the room at the faces of the people who would decide humanity's future. They had the power to save the galaxy, but at what cost? How much of their humanity were they willing to sacrifice to defeat an enemy that had once been human itself? The answer would come sooner than anyone expected. Deep space monitors were detecting movement from the galactic core. The main Devourer fleet was coming, numbering in the millions of ships. The Battle of Helios had been just a test. The real war was about to begin, and somewhere in the dark spaces between stars, ancient minds that had once been human were preparing for a final meal that would consume every living thing in the galaxy. Unless humanity could stop them while still remaining human themselves, the greatest test in human history was coming, and no one knew if they would survive it with their souls intact. The main Devourer fleet emerged from the galactic core like a dark wave of death. Admiral Lisa Harper watched the long-range sensors from Luna Base and felt her heart sink. Millions of ships, each one massive and hungry, were heading straight for the heart of Federation space. Their target was clear: Earth itself. "Admiral, the enemy fleet will reach the Galactic Nexus in 72 hours, reported Colonel Amy Brooks. The Nexus was a region of space where dozens of hyperspace routes came together. If humanity could control that area, they could dictate how the battle would be fought. If they lost it, the Devourers would have a straight path to every inhabited world in the galaxy." Lisa made the hardest decision of her life. "Send the order to all human fleets. We make our stand at the Nexus. Every ship, every weapon, everything we have built over the past 5,000 years. This is what we prepared for." Captain Ben Wright stood on the bridge of the Infinity and felt the ship respond to his thoughts. The Infinity was humanity's greatest achievement, a vessel that existed partially outside normal space and time. Ben could see not just the present battle, but glimpses of possible futures stretching out before him. Ben was 40 years old, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to look into places others could not see. He had been chosen to command the Infinity because his mind could handle the strain of existing in multiple dimensions at once. It was not an easy job, but someone had to do it. "Captain, all human fleets are reporting ready," said his tactical officer, Lieutenant Kate Adams. Kate was one of the few people who could work alongside Ben without going insane from the things she saw on the Infinity's sensors. 200 ships are taking position at the Nexus. 200 ships against millions. By any normal calculation, it should have been hopeless. But these were not normal ships, and the humans who commanded them were no longer entirely normal either. The human fleet that assembled at the Galactic Nexus was a sight that would be remembered for thousands of years. Ships that seemed to shift between solid matter and pure energy. Weapons that could strike across impossible distances. And connecting them all, a network of human consciousness that allowed the entire fleet to act as one mind, while still preserving individual thought. President Claire Matthews watched the preparations from her orbital office above Earth. She knew that if this battle failed, humanity would fall. But she also knew that if they won by becoming too much like their enemies, they would lose their souls. "Madam President," said Marcus Webb, "Admiral Harper is requesting final authorization for the quantum consciousness link." Claire hesitated. The quantum link would connect every human mind in the fleet, making them incredibly powerful, but also risking their individual humanity. It was the same choice the Devourers had made millions of years ago. "Tell Admiral Harper she has authorization," Claire said quietly, "but remind her of Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was humanity's last safeguard. If the human fleet began to show signs of losing their individual consciousness, Earth would cut the quantum link even if it meant losing the battle. Humanity would rather die as humans than live as monsters." The Devourer fleet arrived at the Nexus like a plague of locusts. Their ships were so numerous that they blocked out the stars. Each vessel pulsed with dark energy and an alien hunger that had consumed entire galaxies. Commander Ryan Bell, now serving as the fleet's diplomatic liaison, opened a communication channel to the Devourer command ship. "This is Commander Bell of the Terran Navy. You have entered human space. Withdraw now or face destruction." The response came not in words but in images burned directly into the minds of every human in the fleet. They saw the history of the Devourers, how they had once been a proud species not unlike humanity. They had faced a choice between extinction and transformation. They chose transformation and became something that could never die, but could never truly live. "We were like you once," the alien minds whispered across space. "We chose survival over soul. Join us willingly, and we will make your death quick." Ben Wright felt the Infinity phase in and out of normal reality as the battle began. Around him, space itself seemed to twist and bend as human ships moved through dimensions that had no names. The Devourers attacked in waves, their dark energy, weapons reaching across vast distances. But the human ships were no longer bound by the normal rules of physics. They existed in multiple places at once, striking from angles that should have been impossible. When a devourer ship fired at them, the humans were already somewhere else. Captain Susan Martinez commanded a wing of 12 ships that seemed to dance through space like living things. Her vessels moved in perfect coordination, each one knowing what the others would do before they did it. The quantum consciousness link was working, but Susan could feel the danger in it. She could sense the minds of her crew beginning to merge with her own. "Stay individual," she reminded her people over the communication system. "Remember who you are. Remember why we fight." The battle raged across multiple star systems as the two fleets clashed. Devourer ships died by the thousands, but more kept coming. For every enemy vessel destroyed, 10 more appeared from the dark spaces between galaxies. Lieutenant Kate Adams led a desperate assault on the Devourer command ship, a construct the size of a small moon. Her team had to fight their way through corridors filled with creatures that were part machine and part something that had once been alive. "My God," whispered Sergeant Tony Clark as they moved deeper into the alien ship. "These things used to be people. I can see traces of what they once were." Kate could see it too. Hidden in the mechanical horror were fragments of the original species. Faces that still showed traces of what they had been before they chose to become machines of consumption. At the heart of the command ship, Kate found what she was looking for: the central consciousness that controlled the entire Devourer fleet. It was a massive brain made of living metal and artificial nerves, pulsing with the combined thoughts of billions of consumed minds. "We could have been gods," the brain spoke directly into Kate's mind. "We chose immortality over death. You will make the same choice." Kate looked at the pathetic thing that had once been a proud civilization. "No," she said quietly. "We choose to remain human." She activated the quantum disruptor she had carried into the heart of the ship. The device would sever the connection between the Devourer consciousness and their fleet, but it would also create a feedback loop through the quantum link connecting the human fleet. Back on the Infinity, Ben Wright felt the moment when Kate activated her device. The quantum consciousness network that connected all human minds suddenly became a weapon itself. Instead of absorbing the Devourer consciousness like they had absorbed so many others, the human network overwhelmed them with something the ancient enemy could not understand: individual choice within collective action. The Devourer fleet, faced with minds that could work together while still remaining separate, simply could not process how to fight them. Their hive mind, designed to consume and absorb, met something that refused to be absorbed. One by one, the Devourer ships began to shut down, not destroyed, but simply stopped. The consciousness that had driven them for millions of years finally encountered something it could not consume: humanity's stubborn refusal to give up their individual souls. The battle ended not with explosions or death, but with silence. The Devourer fleet floated dead in space, their crews finally free from the hunger that had driven them for so long. Admiral Lisa Harper stood in her command center and watched as the quantum consciousness link was carefully disconnected. Each human ship reported in separately, their crew still individual, still human. "All ships report successful disconnection," Amy Brooks announced. "No signs of consciousness merger. We're still ourselves." Lisa felt tears running down her face. They had won, but more importantly, they had won while remaining human. In the years that followed, humanity took their place as the guardians of galactic civilization. The other species, humbled but not destroyed, worked alongside humans to rebuild what the Devourers had damaged. The Federation was reformed with humanity at its center, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Human ships patrolled the galactic rim, watching for new threats. Human scientists worked to heal the wounds left by 5 million years of Devourer attacks. Captain Ben Wright, now commanding the exploration ship Endless Horizon, led expeditions to the dark spaces beyond the galaxy. There were still mysteries to solve, still threats to face. But humanity faced them not as the frightened species they had once been, but as something new, a people who had learned to be gods while choosing to remain human. The final entry in Ben's log read, "We withdrew from the galaxy to become what it needed us to be. We returned as what we chose to become. The silence is over, the watch begins, and we will never stop being human." The age of human guardianship had begun, and the galaxy was safer for it.